Everybody's in. Call the meeting to order. And agenda additions and approvals. Are there any that you have from staff?
None from administration.
Any from board? Get a motion to accept the agenda as presented. I'm going to take Mr. Clark. Been absent for a while, so I'm going to make him feel welcome. All those in favor? Okay, and we're going to start with introductions, and we'll start with Rich.
Rich Fitzgerald, Development Officer.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistant.
Ernie Gender, Board Member. Good afternoon. Paul McCabe, Board Member.
Dave Grover, Board Member.
Larry Clark.
Justin Stevens.
Good afternoon.
Les Stulberg, Board Member.
James Nyberg, Chair of MPC.
Craig Teal, Director of Planning and Development.
Major Bishop, Director of Municipal Services.
And just for the record back there,
Johnny.
and
Cody Hudson with WM.
Ursula Becker with WM.
Chris Mason with WM. Yeah.
thank you and welcome everyone. Okay, so we'll just start into development permits and we'll go 4.1 as they're presented and page 3 of your package, gentlemen. And who's taking this one?
I can take this one, Chair.
Okay.
So the purpose of the application is to consider a discretionary use development permit for a waste management facility. Subject property is located 4 miles west of the village of Big Valley. The site is spread across 3/4 sections and totals 480 acres. Access to the subject property is via Provincial Highway 590. The subject property is surrounded by mainly agricultural land, with one residence located approximately 890 meters to the north of the landfill cell on the southeast of 253521. This site has been in operation as a waste management site since 1991. An initial permit, DP 9137, was issued from the county to Canada Waste Management Corporation on July 17, 1991, for a Class 2 industrial landfill site on the south half of 253521, west of 4th. Permits were also issued by Alberta Environment and Alberta Health for the site to operate as an industrial landfill at this time. The approval numbers are listed there. So a site inspection was performed by staff on July 23rd, and it gives you an overview of the subject property of the land. So you see the 3/4 sections in the aerial photo there. The next one, image 2, shows an overview of the subject property. That's a more recent, more zoomed in of just the subject property. Image 3 shows the construction of the new cell, which was approved in development permit 0665. And then it just shows the image 4 shows the Range Road 21-1 with the fencing and the berm that screens the property from adjacent landowners and traffic. Image 5 showing the leachate pond and security fence surrounding it. And image 6 is the site plan from the applicant. And that shows the different cells and the stages and what the land that's been reclaimed, the leachate ponds, so on. Public consultation. As part of the requirements of the Alberta Environment Protection's approval, the applicant was required to do public consultation. The preferred method of the AEPA approval unit was to advertise the notice of application in the local newspaper. Below is a copy of the advertisement from October 19th, 2023. As well as the notification in the newspaper, the applicant contacted adjacent landowners by phone or email and notified them they would be visiting them in person on December 4th, 2023 to discuss the project. Questions arising from the consultation were clarification of what biomedical waste streams are and what an off-spec recycling waste stream is. It should also be noted that the applicant has had communications and other issues with an affected party. Those issues were decided to be outside of the scope of the application or outside of the Alberta Environment and Protected Areas jurisdiction. AEPA decided the complainant to not be directly affected by the landfill operation, and their issues of mud tracking on the highway were in the jurisdiction of Alberta Transportation. AEPA provided the contact information for commercial vehicle enforcement to voice the complainant could voice their concerns on waste transportation on the highways. Please see Appendix A, summary of their landfill engagement in the fall of 2023. Analysis and discussion. The decision of the Development Authority must meet the requirements of the land use bylaw. The subject property is zoned agricultural and a waste management facility is a discretionary use in this district. The County of Stettler land use bylaw defines a waste management facility as the following: sanitary landfill, modified sanitary landfill, solid waste transfer station, hazardous waste management facility, including a facility for the reclamation of contaminated soil or dry waste site, including municipal garbage bins approved or registered pursuant to the Environmental Protection and Enhancement Act for the processing, treatment, storing, recycling, or landfilling of municipal, industrial, household waste, and hazardous waste, but does not include an automobile record. The proposed development meets the use as defined in the land use bylaw. Waste management sites are regulated by Alberta Environment and Protected Areas, and they are responsible for regulating what types of material are allowed to be processed, how the materials are processed, monitoring of the site, and any environmental issues arising from the site. Due to the site being accessed from the provincial highway, any issues with mud tracking from the site falls under the jurisdiction of Alberta Transportation. The county is limited in what it can regulate for this site. Issues such as screening from adjacent lands, fencing to keep waste from blowing on adjacent property, perimeter lighting, and ensuring the uses listed in the district where the site is proposed are issues the county can address. The applicant has received the proper permitting from Alberta Environment Protected Areas, as well as the Alberta Transportation for the site to operate as proposed in this application. It should be noted the application is not expanding the current site in any way. It is simply to bring the county's permit in line with their provincial permit. The proposed development meets all the setbacks, so there's no need for a variance. So the alternatives for the MPC are to approve the application based on the conditions put forward by administration, or approve the application based on revised conditions, postpone a decision on the application to receive further information, or deny the application stating the reasons. Administration recommends that development DP 24009 be approved with the conditions detailed in the attached draft development permit. So the conditions notable on the application are that the proposed development shall be undertaken and completed in accordance with the attached site plan. The applicant, all applicants, so they did apply and have received their Alberta roadside development permit to abide by the rules in that, which are limiting mud tracking on the road. They're responsible to do that, so we just added that as a condition in ours as well. The applicant shall maintain a screen fence along the perimeter of the subject property suitable to stop blowing debris from entering the neighboring lands. Applicant shall ensure the berms are constructed along the active cell sites to screen the landfill from adjoining lands. And goes on to note that this permit is issued subject to any other provincial or federal approvals that may be required. And this permit does not guarantee that the applicant will be able to obtain the other required approvals, nor does it excuse the violation of any regulation, bylaw, or act that may affect proposed development. The applicant must ensure that all waste material debris from the site be contained to their property. In the occasion that debris does enter adjoining lands, it is the responsibility of the applicant to remove, clean up the debris in a timely fashion. The applicant shall operate the site as per the conditions of AEPA approval, that's listed there, including but not limited to types of waste, how the materials are stored and processed, and maintaining and reporting of environmental monitoring systems. And then the final is the applicant shall maintain weed control by mowing, chemical spray, and or grazing. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, any questions? Mr. Clark.
Just a question on 6. We haven't heard any complaints for quite some time, but through your community engagement with the material debris from the site being contained, this would have been a point about 3 years ago. We were meeting quite a bit with Alberta Environment pieces. What have you put in place to keep that? Is that, are you getting complaints like you did in the past, or?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we've, as in the pictures that we have fencing, we have process of with the berm. We also have constant communication with the local neighbors. that if we do see it, we're trying to identify it before they do, and then we contact them and then clean it up right away. So yes, with permission.
No, that was what we were trying to get towards, but never really saw anything back after, so.
So, and to administration now, and maybe to the applicant as well. For the, I mean, we're really just about the complaints that we get, and the mud on the road is definitely something that we're hearing about. Not necessarily our jurisdiction, but is there something else in our bylaws as far as nuisance or something? Because it has been substantial. Considering we've had such a dry year, I'll be honest, I was a little surprised at the amount that we've got. So I'm just, from a number of ratepayers concerned, ones that don't even necessarily live in the area, but drive through the area, that mud and debris on the road is causing grief. So what steps have you taken, and maybe through to administration, what do we have as far as a check and balance on this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our jurisdiction is limited on this because it is a provincial highway, but that doesn't mean that we can't notify the proper authorities and have it dealt with. We can forward on any of those complaints and concerns. And we can also send those on to the applicant as well so that they're aware. But as far as us, you know, the only thing we can do is what I did in the draft development permit, is to put it as a condition that they have to abide by the permit through Alberta Transportation, which does list that mud tracking as a condition of their permit as well.
Okay. I'm going to let the applicant respond. Then I've got Mr. Stevens, then Mr. Brishak, and Mr. Clark.
Yeah, so we have a mandatory wheel wash that's put in place that every truck leaving has to cross. We also have a process that any mud track out that's identified, we have a sweeper set up on our loader with water and everything to collect it and bring it back. So that is a process that is documented as well.
A new implementation then? I'll be honest, this summer really, I'll be frank with you, it really sucked. Because we actually had quite a few complaints. At least
It should be followed already, so definitely something that can step up.
A note to you. I've got Mr. Stevens and then Mr. Grisham.
If open burning is conducted at the landfill, is that happening? Do you guys do any open burning?
No, there's no open burning.
The provincial approval. I was curious because I didn't think that was.
We don't do that on site, no.
Okay, perfect.
Mr. Grisham?
I was just on the last question, I was just going to advise that the peace officers of the county do have some very limited authority under the Environmental Protection Enhancement Act, and it is limited to solid waste. So road waste, if we were having problems with compliance otherwise, we would still have some enforcement ability there.
Okay, very, very good. Mr. Clark and then Mr. Grover?
This is back to that previous one also, but I do know, you know, from weeds, et cetera, oil field leases, you know, trucks had to be washed off and not take any mud at all onto the highway. So you have a bunch of vehicles coming from different locations dragging mud back onto a highway. I would think it would almost fall under a weed act or something too, because there could be a source of weeds there. So if you do have the equipment in place, I've driven through it a few times this summer also, and same idea is that with as dry as it was. Mind you, our rain was very varied throughout our municipality, but there was a lot of mud on the road, and along with that can be weed seeds and can be transporting that throughout different areas of the county. So it's just I think that maybe has to be looked at, that piece right there.
I think for you, just take it, hear it, and note that that is an issue that needs to be dealt with. Mr. Grover?
Yeah, I haven't been in that area. What I would like to see is that mud cleaned up, like the year before it was dry. But last year there was a lot on there, and what are they bringing back out that are in the wheels or when they dump and stuff like that? People are really worried about that. And how many people neighbors did you contact? You said you contacted neighbors, how many?
6 to 8 roughly.
Everyone directly around the landfill.
But back 4 miles,
Some are,
What we focused on were the.
Use the mic, please. Sorry.
We focused on the adjacent landowners, in particular, literally the properties that touch our facility.
already detached.
That's correct, yeah.
Stuff that's 2
Right.
miles from their
Yeah.
area.
And
Where
in,
the
and in,
garbage could go to, no?
and in some cases, a little further back, as Cody mentioned, he's very conscious of kind of the litter conditions and how those need to be managed. So we talked to some of those folks as well, but really didn't stretch much further than that.
I see, because some of it affects the groundwater rather than people that touch the can and also the garbage that's flowing and stuff would affect more than that. So you probably maybe, landowners, you probably only got 4. 4, maybe 5.
Roughly 7,
So you,
10,
roughly 7, I believe.
7. Okay. How long is this one, how long before this cell is filled up and then you got one more cell and then? Yeah.
So the current, we call them units. So we are currently on unit 1, and that one should be filled up by 2026. And that is when we would be moving to unit 3. We do, because we need to select the waste that goes at the bottom, we do like to have both operational at the same time, so we can properly select what goes at the bottom.
Or you're gonna both operate at the same time.
As in, there's a little bit of overlap.
So, then you have test wells around the new ones, drilled, yeah?
Yes, we do.
And not your employees checking it, but somebody that's not in your company.
Yes, there is a third-party consultant that does, yeah,
Somebody.
and that gets reported in our annual
How many
report.
test wells is there?
Sorry?
How many test wells around the new stuff is there?
Around I would have to actually go back and double check.
I'll give you my number. I would like to know how many there.
Yeah, we can give you that information. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Mr. Gender.
It's in here that the subject property is zoned agriculture. Like I can see definitely where it has not been converted over to say like any business, that it is agriculture, but I'm kind of wondering, okay, if the site is still zoned agriculture, why?
This one's for you, Mr.
I'll try that one, Mr. Chairman. I must admit, I haven't looked up the history of the zoning. It just happens that our land use bylaw has chosen to treat this as a discretionary use within the agricultural district, rather than flipping it over to say an industrial district or any other specialized district. So as of the rules that stand today for us to process a development permit, that's just where the land use bylaw is. So unfortunately, my speculation on why we wouldn't have rezoned back in the early 90s, it would just be that we haven't, my best guess.
I think there was also a thought that if it was a discretionary use, there seemed to be a little bit more control with it. And
There is, which just Mr. Chair, maybe further elaborate on my answer. We do this with a lot of non-agricultural uses so that we don't necessarily, you could look at it as a bit of less red tape for things that are coming on, but its status of discretionary use does mean that we get to consider the location and whether or not it's appropriate. It's not an automatic approval. It's compared to the permitted uses, you'll be considered if we think the context is appropriate and the impacts on the adjacent properties can be appropriately managed. So we do that with agricultural supply businesses, even things like the G3 terminal that was built also were treated discretionary but fit under the existing agricultural district. So since at least 2010 and certainly with this site from the early 90s, we've chosen to take that approach.
I can see you would say like where the G3 would fit under agriculture because it is based on agriculture. But this one here, it's more based on, I'll have to say it's based on more of an industrial. I find that it's something.
That gives us a little bit more control on the direct district than it would if we would have had it in an industrial site. And back in those days, that's what they were thinking.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions or concerns? Then I will ask the question from somebody to give me a motion. Who is? Mr. Clark? Okay, thank you. I'm picking on you because you haven't been here for a while.
It's just one, yeah, that's it, that's it.
I know.
Chair.
So, gentlemen, with the conditions in place, the question is, all in favor? And opposed? We have one opposed, Mr. Grover. Okay. Thank you. Who's up next? Actually, what we will, no, I will, I just made a note. We're going to put it under 7.1, the minutes from last meeting. We missed that on there. So do I see from the board that we are okay to change the agenda? Shaking of heads, yes. 7.1, we will add as minutes from the last meeting. Okay. And then we're going to go to 4.2, page 46 of your package, gentlemen. Alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the application is to consider a discretionary use permit for an RV as a dwelling and a variance application to allow a covered deck as an addition to an RV in the Resort Residential Community Service District. Subject property is located within the Roshan Sands Heights subdivision. The applicant had applied for and received 2 previous permits for this use. And by that use, I mean the RV as a dwelling unit with the covered deck. And so this development permit 20019 was brought forward to MPC for decision and was approved on June 25th of 2020. It was noted in the report that a variance will be required for the covered deck, and it was approved as such. The permit expired in June of 2022. At that point, development permit TP 22021 was applied for and approved on April 29th of 2022. This application was approved by the development officer, and although the covered deck was identified on the application form by the applicant, there was no mention nor a variance on the permit to allow for the covered deck. That permit has expired, and the applicant is now applying for another 2-year permit for the property. The property is located in the Resort Residential Community Service District in the County of Stettler. The proposed use of an RV as a dwelling is a discretionary use in this district. The proposed use of an addition of a deck to an RV is permitted use in this district. However, the applicant is proposing to use a covered deck. Section 76.4 of the County of Stettler Land Use Bylaw states that in the Roshan Sands Heights subdivision, an addition to a recreational vehicle shall be limited to a ground level uncovered deck. The application was referred to county staff. No comments were received pertaining to the proposed development. So site photos, if we can go to those. So the first picture is a view from the east of the property looking west. You can see the covered deck there. View from the west side looking east from the street. You can see the RV. You don't see much of the covered deck from that angle. And then some interior photos of the deck and how it's been developed and laid out. And looks like a cooking area and a seating area and whatnot. This covered deck is used by the applicant as a recreational area as well as a cooking and eating area. The RV stays on the lot year round and it is not removed over the winter. The exterior of the covered deck has been trimmed and constructed well. Section 23.1 of the Land Use Bylaw states that the Development Authority may decide on a development permit application even though the proposed development does not comply with the Land Use Bylaw. If, in the opinion of the Municipal Planning Commission, the proposed development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use of, enjoyment, or value of the neighboring parcels of land. The RV is less than 10 years of age and is in very good condition. The RV meets the required setbacks of the district. The proposed use for a deck as presented does not meet the requirements of section 76.4 due to the roof cover. So it is compliant in all the setback requirements. So alternatives for MPC are to approve the application as put forward, approve the application based on revised conditions, or postpone a decision on the application to receive further information or deny the application stating reasons. Administration recommends that development permit DP 24084 be approved with conditions as detailed in the attached draft development permit DP 24084 for an RV as a dwelling with a ground level deck with no roof structure. And go through the conditions, and they're just the general conditions for an RV in that development, and with the requirement of the roof being removed. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Mr.
Just have a question on, have we ever received any complaints with this structure?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Ullman, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, sure.
If you go to the mic, that'd be great.
I think Rich said most of it there. I applied for the permit 2020 for the variance. I got approval. I know at that time, the council, one of the concerns was the trailer being moved and, this cattle shed appearance. For the record, as you mentioned, I've never moved the trailer. I have no plans to move the trailer. In fact, I built a fence, you can see in the picture, to make it more sightly on the roadside, which would be challenging. Pretty much have to remove the fence to remove the trailer. Yeah, that's pretty much that. I do plan on building. I plan on incorporating that deck into my building once we build. I do know that, at some point this council or future council might not allow RVs in that area at some point. And at such a point, I will have no choice but to build, just not ready to do so yet. So I guess I've been using it for 4 years. I'd like to continue to do so. That's kind of my story.
Okay. What's your thoughts, gentlemen? Where are we at on this? So go ahead.
Well, I would like to remain as consistent as possible. The rules have over the years kind of changed a little bit in this particular subdivision. And RVs are allowed. Ground level decks are allowed. That's kind of a no-brainer, but we have had in the past those that have applied for covered structures and have not allowed them. I am leaning towards, now that we have rules that we have been quite stringent on and consistent, I would like to maintain that moving forward. There is a lot of mixed feelings in that community, whether trailers or dwellings should be allowed. And I think the first and most important step for it is for us to be consistent with the rules that are laid out. So I would be prepared to make a motion that we approve development permit application DP 24084 with conditions allowing a ground level deck.
Okay. I have a question to the applicant. Taking the cover off, how's that going to work for you or not? I mean, just be honest and frank with us.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the pictures. Basically, it would destroy it. There's nothing in there can be left outside uncovered. So everything inside would have to disappear. It would be a deck that would be unusable. It would affect our use of the property 100% to the point where I don't know that we'd be able to really much use it, unfortunately.
Okay. Fair enough. Any other thoughts or comments? Mr. Clark and Mr. Gilbert.
That's why I did ask about complaints in the past, because, we're seeing it from the back here, and we've seen it from the front on the picture just below with the fence. But it is that whole piece where we've been taking a stand on this. But this is not quite the same pictures as we were looking at on some other ones that we were looking at, so.
I will let you respond to that, Mr. Stephen.
Oh, this is not a response.
Oh, okay, then
Just another question.
Then I'm moving on. Back, Mr. Stolberg.
Yeah, this structure doesn't fit with the community really, and council has been open to allowing RVs and decks and things temporarily till people can
get a chance to build. But it's been going on quite a while, and and we have had a lot of complaints, maybe not on this structure, but we've had a lot of complaints on people building fairly large homes that they're paying pretty good taxes on, and they don't want to look at things that aren't homes in that area. So I'm thinking these things need to be of a temporary nature. So I don't think it's good to keep going for you. Just keep renewing.
Mr. Stevens?
The applicant has his hand.
Okay.
When this was approved 2 years ago, I'm just looking for clarity. It had a covered deck, but that was not applied for or wasn't in place then.
The applicant clearly identified that there was a covered deck on his application, but the development officer, for whatever reason, made no mention of that in the permit, and the permit wasn't brought forward to MPC, which it should have been, because we don't, as development officers, don't have the authority to approve a variance like that. So it should have been brought forward to MPC, and the permit itself makes no mention of the covered deck.
So if I can, and I think the idea, the premise, and I'm just going on it, the idea behind the whole 2-year permit there was basically you can have your holiday trailer there, work around building your forever home or cabin, and that was kind of the idea behind it. So I am leaning this one as we're at 4 years for this one now, but Mr. Alderman, I'll let you go again.
Yeah. So I guess it kind of in response to the first one there was,
And like I mentioned, I firmly think at some point RVs are no longer going to be permissible here, and you're going to stop renewing 2-year permits at some point, and that's, I guess, why they're 2-year permits. I guess my point is 4 years ago when I did apply, and I was in front of council, so 2 years ago I didn't have to, but 4 years ago I did. I got the approval. I guess my point is it's already built, it's there, no complaints. I've kind of kept the trailer there like I was asked, in council. At the point when you stop renewing trailers, period, then yeah, absolutely tear it down or incorporate it into the build. But if you, let's say we don't do this cover deck and we take it down, the trailer's still there. It will be approved, I believe, I'm assuming, for another 2 years. Leave the deck there for, until you get rid of the trailer. It's kind of already there.
So the question I have for you, how far are you away from doing a build? I know this is a tough one for me to ask because I can't ask you to go into the future. But
Yeah, I can't go into the future either. I mean, I think we'd all like to build. Just, how does that look today? I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
And if he was to build today, or apply for a build, he would have 2 years to build, correct?
Yeah, so the development permits typically have a 1-year start date and a 2-year completion date from the date of issuance.
I'm leaning towards the way that I feel for you. I really do, man, because I understand where you're at. You've done a great job with this. This is a beautiful thing. But the rules were put in place to move people to that end of encouraging builds. That was the whole idea. Many of the people in the other area did build. And I think that was what we heard loud and clear multiple times, that this was give you that extra little bit of time to get to that point to build. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Now that I've received clarification, I'm especially torn on this, and I do get a ton of phone calls about people frustrated that we seem to be making it easy to trailers to remain what is viewed or feared as indefinite from many of the people. So I get a lot of those complaints. But part of the reason I'm torn is if we don't approve now, we're just compounding an error that was done 2 years ago, and that gives me very mixed feelings.
So go ahead, Mr. Clark.
It's just another question on it, but we do allow, I don't know if you call them ancillary buildings or what other types of buildings on there. So this one right there, what would have happened if if a wall was put on the other side? Is it a covered deck or is it an ancillary building? So you look at the inside of it, you look at,
Model.
I know, but you look at the inside, you look at the outside.
I'm with you. So I was, one of the compromises that I was thinking is that if we gave him the permit 2-year now with the condition that in that 2 years, he brings forward a build permit, which would really give you 4 years. That may or may not help the cause, helps him, helps us justify that we're not just blanketing these things. Our goal, our general goal in this planning is to eventually have houses everywhere there. This is not a trailer court. Never has been, never was it expected to be. But we realize it is a lake, and we realize that the idea behind it was you're going to live there for a couple of years, build your house, Bob's your uncle. That was the general plan of this. If the plan concept was put forward, that's what it is. We understand life happens in the go forward. It doesn't always happen the way I want it to, but I understand that completely. How do we make it work both ways? Now, to Mr. Clark's suggestion, I'm going to go to administration. What is your, how much can you make tomato and tomato sound alike?
I think even with the walls, where as a development officer, if I was doing a site inspection on this property, where I would have a hard time calling it an ancillary building is because it's literally attached to the RV. It's directly adjacent to it. If it were 10 feet away in its own separate unit, I could consider that an ancillary building. But with it being.
Move the trailer?
No, I built it so that I couldn't move it. Around was their concern.
Government, don't you?
There is a breezeway connection between the two, isn't there?
It's hard to, is it right up against it? Is there?
Looks like the pullout goes into the.
Yeah, the pullout, like, there's like a, yeah, the pullout is away. So the deck itself, the actual wheels are 4 feet away from that. And then, I'm down something so no one falls in between. Right? So it appears like it's all the way, but the back structure is not, like the deck is not, there's just a piece.
Would it be, I know we have a motion on the table right now, but would it be advantageous to have this go back to the planning department to come back next month? Is that something we can do, Mr. Chair, or Mr.
Sure, you have a couple more questions piling up there, but on the process question, if the applicant's prepared to give us more time, because we probably have consumed the vast majority of the 40 days we had to.
He did, I did request an extension from him previously to bring it forward to this month's MPC, because last month.
We would have to repeat that process, but it's that the applicant does have input in that. So if you're willing to, if he's willing to give us more time, then we could go back, look at some other options and then bring it back in.
Okay. Mr. Clark.
Well, the time is ticking on the age of the RV too. Like it's a very nice looking RV, et cetera, but then that has to come back as a permit when it hits, is it 10-year mark? Or what's the lifespan of an RV?
It is 10 years on the RV.
Specific approval. And as it is definitely part of the living piece of it, so I'm either swaying towards what you've said as chair, or because it's, if we need more time, we need more time to go through it. But it is, if there have been numerous complaints on it, I would have a different opinion too, but.
Okay. So, Mr. Stevens, would you take a friendly amendment to?
Well, I think I am going to withdraw my motion.
Okay. Good. That. You guys are making my life. Okay, so I would like a motion to go forward then. Go ahead. Okay. So, Mr. Albin, would you give us the time to look at your application over the next month and see if we can come to some workable solution that doesn't necessarily mean you taking the roof off of your. Okay. So now there's two options. We could go with the the 2 years with the condition that in that 2 years he brings forward a build application, or we send him back to the planning department and bring forward that this is an ancillary building. So where's our flavor on this? Mr. Stevens, Mr. Stolberg, then Mr. Stevens.
I would just like the applicant to comment on the first suggestion of applying for a building permit within the next 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would do my best to do that. Yeah.
Which would you prefer?
Sorry, just to be clear, 2 years to bring a building permit into place or a month for reconsideration? Sorry.
Yeah, and the reconsideration would turn this into an auxiliary building where we would ask you to build a wall.
Probably the 2 years.
Okay, so the 2 years and build a building permit. That would suffice our goal to move people forward. So, Mr. Stevens.
You got Mr.
Clarity on terminology, Mr. Chair. The development permit would be first for the house. Building permit would be a follow-up. So I get the general gist where you're going, but it would be a development permit first.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah. Sorry, so that would be the go forward. So basically in 4 years, you would have to have a house built or some structure that would resemble that. If it's a cabin, some people, it's not a house, it's a cabin. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Given what the applicant has said for his preference, I would be willing to move that we approve this as is to allow time, the 2 year time frame to come forward with a application for a build.
So just to be clear, that within this 2 year period, he has a permit. He has to, within this 2 year period, he could wait till the very last minute, put in an application for a cabin house structure, at which time we would reassess this, right? I'm going to go with administration. Are you good with that? You're cringeworthy looking at me.
If I could clarify, I think what you're proposing would be we remove the condition that the deck be ground level only and add a condition in that says the applicant must apply for a development permit for a permanent dwelling within the next 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going at. Okay, Mr. Grover.
I think he's already had 2 years. I'd be in favor of giving 1 year and that's it.
Okay. Would you take that friendly amendment or where are you at?
I'm not in favor of it.
I am hesitant. That's a lot of planning and we're talking about a pretty large commit. So I will stick with the 2.
Okay, so we have, gentlemen, we're going to let him be for 2 years. And within those 2 years, he's going to bring back a plan to build something. Okay, I find this to be a very good compromise, hopefully. And now I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? And opposed? We have 1 opposed. So I hope you understand what we just did there. And if you don't, ask Rich. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Subdivision file 5.13, 54 of your packet. And Mr. Teal's going to take that.
Yes, I will, Mr. Chair. Maybe, and if you can jump to 61, I think is the interesting graphic.
61?
Okay, out a little bit. And so this subdivision application, Mr. Chair, involves 1 quarter section where the proposal is to create a new parcel around the existing dwelling and a very long east-west driveway. But it also involves the quarter section to the north, which is also owned by the applicant. It's just not shown on the screen. So in the, we're in the southeast of 8, where the house is. That pink area shows the outline of a new parcel going, it's a very generous buffer around an existing driveway. So that's basically following the fence line on either side along the fields. Going, once it gets all the way to the west, going down past a former lease site, and then down to the house. And then this other part of the parcel configuration is really being determined by the location of the open discharge, which is kind of unfortunately middle point underneath the label. And then the 90-meter radius setback from that basically creates that kind of bulb out at the very bottom that you're seeing. So about 20-acre parcel, a vast majority of that, well, 6 acres of it is about driveway. And another 5 to 6 acres of it is actually the yard, the driveway area, and some of the outbuildings around the yard, the house proper. As a first parcel out, it has that effect, if we don't address it, of really creating a big agricultural parcel on the north side of the driveway, and then the remnant agricultural parcel on the south side. And then we would also bump into issues of MR dedication. So in conversation with the applicant, the suggestion that she put forward was to instead take all the land that would be isolated from the remnant south of the driveway and the new parcel, and instead incorporate that with 160 acres, a quarter section to the north, through a plan that would create basically a very large agricultural parcel, which in effect would mean we'd have one big agricultural holding, then we'd have the panhandle driveway running along that edge, and then we'd have potentially someone else's field below that. So that's how we looked at trying to kind of clean up the parcel boundaries and deal with the second parcel issue. Beyond that, the application does need some brushing at the existing access point, both to the north and the south. There are a few trees that into the right of way that don't provide us that good line of sight, but otherwise the access is good. The farm access to the remnant to the south of that, it's hard to find in the photo, but it is very grass covered, but it is quite workable for farm access off of the range road. The range road and to the north of the consolidation, that access would actually start matching the field patterns that you can see on the air photo. So that would use the access from the northeast of 830 to the north. The road dedication, 5 meters through road acquisition agreement is required along the township, or the range road, along the east side of the property. So it hasn't previously been dedicated. So that is attached as a condition. And the recommendation is for approval subject to the consolidation of that area north of the panhandle for the driveway with that quarter section to the north. In terms of the Rural Development Fund, looking at this as a farmstead removal, the maximum that's allowed is 10 acres before you have to start making a contribution to the $1,000 acre contribution. So in this case, at 20 acres, up to 10, that allowance has been consumed largely by the driveway, 50% of it, and then the remainder around the house. So the Rural Development Fund contribution, again, subject to the exact size once the surveyor brings back in their drawing, is approximately $10,000. So, Mr. Chair, the recommendation is for approval with the, I'm sorry, Andrew, if I can jump you down to the conditions page, I didn't note that down.
Actually, you can see on the map, because I've got questions on the map.
Here we are. So relatively, those 4 conditions, which I think I've covered off already, Mr. Chair. That's it for the presentation.
Okay, a couple of questions I have. Now, the sewer discharge, considering that that's a 5 acre parcel, is that big enough down there? That bottom vault?
It is. It's so
just.
remember it's a radius, so it kind of if anything, there's probably some corners that could be trimmed if you're out there walking with the surveyor once you pick up the axe of the exact location. Unfortunately, the label is a bad placement, but and we do purposely try to make this tight.
That's to give us a little circle in there.
No, we did in this particular case.
Under the circle's under the label.
Just if you need to look at that. So the 90 and 90 would mean we need at least 180, and you can see on the south east west dimension it's got 201.
Okay.
And 176 going north south creates a 180 by 180 box that we typically would need.
Okay, fair enough. I just see that it's 176 there. So it's not hitting that top corner then.
It's not, but that's also where you're doing the sweep of the curve, right? We're putting a circle in a square.
Okay, fair enough. The other question I have is, like, this is kind of we talked about this, about convoluting different tri-pentagon style. Why did we not just square this up and say, this is where we're at? I mean, to me, it seems like you're going to pay more money on the surveying of this than what's going on. That's just my thought.
If I recall correctly from my conversation with the applicant, there still was an interest, even where you see that intrusion into that one field. The preference was to still leave that in field as intact as possible.
Okay.
Yeah. And if I may.
No, I got Mr. Clark first, sir.
That was going to be my question, because I don't know underneath that hashtag if it's a lease or what was back there, but
it, like to me, that, yeah, I think the same thing. We just make that.
It's such an odd design. Yeah. Anyways, Mr. Stover?
I was gonna say, in the final measurements, if you could put all that stubble field in the other side, if it still allowed enough room for that sewer,
But I don't think.
it would be good to put her back, but as much as, oh, there we go. Oh, it has,
So you can,
Part of it.
the south one is the one that we're confident on. That one, you can cut the corner a little bit, but you're not going to keep it completely out of the field.
man, that would-
Well, I feel like we're wanting our cake and eating it too a bit here. We want to leave as much land in ag purposes as possible. So when they just take a little corner here or there to give them the radius, well, no, we'd really prefer if you squared it
No, I
out.
was just wondering, the reason it was the question was why. That was the
One
why.
at the top, it doesn't look like ag, you know, that to me looks.
Sorry, but whatever it is. Mr. Grover, you're moving this forward?
The one circle there from the sewer. Over somebody else's property. They have no control over it. Divide it the way it is.
Okay, so Mr. Gender.
I'll move it as is, but like on number 3, about a year or so ago, they had requested brush removal at the laneway, so I don't know whether, it almost sounds like it wasn't done back there.
I must admit, Mr. Chair, I have not had a chance to.
That's a different
look at
department.
requests, yeah.
Wouldn't went through these guys. You just have to follow up with the brushing crews.
I guess with this application, it'll be followed up through with anyway.
There you go.
You know, 3 years ago, actually, it was like, I'd almost say you could have had some of the regrowth over the last. We may be being very particular on this one. It's not like we're looking at trees that are 8 inches thick. They're all more of the sapling.
What they were concerned about is, say, like the bus picks the kids up at the end of the laneway, and there was adhering the sight lines for the bus.
Okay. We'll get her done. I'm pretty sure somebody will. Okay. Not looking to put brushing into Craig and Rich's department. So we have a motion on the table. Any questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, short and sweet department report.
Rich is going to start us off, Mr. Chair.
Song and dance.
Mr. Chairman?
So this is a quarterly report, so it's from July 1st to September 30th. So in that time, planning staff have processed 20 development permits. These permits can be broken down into the following types of development: residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional. The following figure shows the breakdown of the numbers in each development type. So you can see the majority of our 85% of our permits are residential, 5% were commercial, 5% were industrial, and 5% were institutional. Residential audience. Breaks that down through there. So then these numbers can be broken down further, forming more detailed analysis. Each of the following charts describes exactly what kind of development occurred in each development class. So in the residential development, we have 32% were ancillary buildings, 4% were relocated dwellings. That means it was a house that was moved in from somewhere else. An ancillary building placement, that means a prefabbed ancillary building were 5%. Demolition permits were 14%. RVs as dwellings were 18%, and new home construction came in at 27%. The other classes, there was only one of each, so that makes it pretty. The commercial development was a home business. The industrial was a power generation and data processing application, and the institutional application was a picnic shelter and parking lot. There was a decrease in development permits in the commercial, industrial, and institutional development classes from the previous quarterly report. Each of the 3 classes had the 1 development permit completed. So this, again, keep in mind, this is a quarterly report. We basically, I believe, we're within 5 or 6 development permits of where we were last year, numbers wise. I'm fully expecting us to probably come pretty well in line, maybe a few more by the end of the year, this year. So it's been a busy year. There have been more Looking back from year over year, compared to last year, we did a lot more of the RVs as dwelling permits, where this year we're doing more of the, a lot more to the permits, like the gravel pit applications, the Bitcoin mining, that kind of stuff. Year over year, numbers wise, seems to be about the same, but much different applications.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, and Craig, do you have something?
Yes, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the steering committee for the Municipal Development Plan Land Use Bylaw Review, just to remind councilors that we are hosting a series of community open houses and workshops. The second one goes tonight in Erskine, and 2 more are scheduled for next week on Tuesday in Red Willow and on Wednesday in Bymore. So the objective this time is to give people a chance just to offer their thoughts generally about any topics involved in the land use bylaw and the MDP review. And more specifically, we're hoping to get their feedback and participation to help us look at the vision for the MDP and what they'd like to see in the county 20 to 25 years from now. So if you're able to attend, please do join us. And if you're able to encourage your ratepayers or people you come across to look at it and come join us, that would be much appreciated as well.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
I should add all the information about them, exactly which hall we're in, is available on our website. If you just go check the MDP and LUV review tag, which is on right on the front page, the bottom set of panels.
I think it also was set to our council's calendar, right?
It may have only gone to the steering committee board members.
Can be found in the county connection too.
It's
in there.
Much so. Yeah.
Got it out lots of places. Excellent. It's like Craig said, today is Erskine. I would encourage, if you could, any of the councillors at least attend one. I know the steering committee members that sit on here are going to try to make as many as we can. But if you can attend one, it would be just to get a feel of what people are thinking about and saying. So if you want to attend them all, that's cool too. Anything else from you? Okay. I just need a mover. Oh, you're so close.
Missed the minutes completely the first time. So
I got that under. We've added it to new business at some point when. So I'm going to go with Les taking and receive for information the director's report.
I'll make that motion.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. New business 7.1 is the minutes approval, which will be put on the agenda go forward so that the chairman doesn't forget them. Anybody have any questions or concerns with those there said minutes? Mr. Stevens, would you like to give us a motion to accept those?
I will move that we accept the previous minutes.
Questions, concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. That's carried. No other new business, no other old business, no in camera. Next meeting, November 27th, unless it gets changed. I see Rich is waving.
a little bit of heads up on that one, Mr. Chair. Looking ahead, unless there's a lot of people that want to join us for Christmas Day, we probably have to reschedule the December MPC.
November 27th, we will reschedule, and we'll, at that time, we'll know better what we're.
5th. Most likely the 18th, and we can confirm that at the November Municipal Planning Commission meeting.
We'll tie it in with the Ag Service Board. What did we say it was for the Ag Service Board? I don't think
I think we can.
Well, they haven't talked about it.
I think we've discussed canceling the December, but we haven't.
Okay.
I'm not either, yeah.
Okay, so heads up for that one, gentlemen. No other questions or concerns? Everybody's good? Then Mr. Grover?
Sure.
All right, you would like to adjourn? All those in favor? Thank you.